Now, I know you've been waiting for this one, boys and gals. And listen, this is a special edition of Tier List Friday, standing for TLF. Why, Flame? Why is this so special?
Because in today's tier list, we're going to be talking about how the specs are ranked in your average 15s, what you do with your pugs to get some of that loot, where most people probably are doing 15s than 20s, let's say.
This is basically pug world territory, all right? That doesn't mean that all of the logs that we're going to look at are pugs, but we all know that in this range of keys, a lot of people just go into the group finder and start doing their keys. And this is a little bit different. And right off the bat, we have to say, when you look at performance in logs, basically all these specs are equal. So we're going to rank them a little bit different. We're not going to look at the max performance or whatever, but rather at minimum performance.
Probably what you might expect by doing, you know, random keys with a random mage that you don't know, that maybe just plays Arcane for the first time. And, you know, obviously every key level comes with a disclaimer. 15s are usually, since they're lower, more accessible. People don't optimize that much, and it's more realistic to what you would encounter. Not to mention that for some specs, things just die really quick.
Yeah, we're gonna have a lot of that today. So it's gonna be a very juicy one. But before that, next Friday on the TLF show, we're gonna have you decide the tier list. So we're gonna have Mythic plus melees for next Fridays, and it's gonna be 100% decided by you.
It's gonna be a shit show.
What you will have to do is, after you watch this tier list, go into the description of the video. There's a Google form over there where you will be able to vote S, A, B, C, D, whatever in the tier, your spec or whatever spec or what you think. And after you vote all 13 melee specs, then it's done, all right? So we're gonna keep this form up for a week. You click on whatever you want over there, and we're gonna look at it in the next TLF video. We're gonna make basically a video about your thoughts, what you think, not looking at logs, not looking at data.
No, there's no data, there's nothing,
So
it's just community perception.
Yeah, that would be the people's tier list for melees in Mythic Plus, all right? So remember that. Okay, now let's start it off with Affliction Warlock, okay? So Affliction Warlock will be one of those examples where in a 15, things tend to die so fast that those dots you're gonna spread around with Seed of Corruption, they'll do damage.
Yeah, so I've seen afflictions, and it depends. This also matters a lot in how geared you are as your affliction, if you're playing the affliction, and how geared are your teammates. Because if you're getting like some atomic outlaw, sub rogue, or a boomy that just melts stuff because they're like 420 eye level and you don't have time to damage, that's gonna impact it. But overall, Affliction is kind of okay. It really does well in AoE because it just bursts, has it accessible. Like in Algathar, you're probably gonna do a lot of damage, but outside of that, it's like to optimize damage is gonna stick a little bit.
Yeah, you can definitely place this in around the C tier, just because they're no, B tier. I'm sorry, Affliction. You know, we love Affliction.
Deserves a little bit more.
But this is again in a 15, and there's so many variables that can change. Flame mentioned a couple of those, like having a big boy geared up meta spec or whatever will just melt all the mobs around. You're not gonna have that much time. But I do believe there's still instances where Affliction can dominate in 15s, and this is why it's a very decent B tier. On the other hand, one like super loggy plus 25 spec Boomkin, which would be somewhere on A and S tier, over here, not that much.
It's even worse. Balanced Druid is also maybe even a better example than Affliction, since Affliction has ways to apply dots in AoE. Balanced Druid doesn't really have ways to apply that. You still have to spend a lot of globals to do so, and by the time you do that,
everybody's dead.
Mobs will probably be half HP, so Balanced Druid is kind of still around B tier, but considering that it's overall way better than Affliction, the fact that it's at the same level of Affliction is even more egregious.
No, the thing is, its damage profile can sometimes shine much better than Affliction, so this is why it's taking its front, but it's kind of on the same level, right? So you're gonna have problems like ramping up everything, putting all those dots, same issue. And you don't even necessarily need to have like a super geared bad boy. You're gonna see some specs here that will be, I don't know, on-demand AoE, giga, not capped damage will just take the cake from it. That's
much
how it is.
That's kind of how it is.
Now, Arcane Mage. Now talk about setting up. Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Arcane Mage in 15s. Okay.
I don't know if you're geared, if you have like over 410 eye level, I don't know how you play Arcane Mage in 15s and not just want to stop playing the game, because there's so much setup going around in Arcane's rotation. Not to mention, it's not an easy spec to play.
Nope.
And if you have affixes and a lot of mechanics that, you know, kind of have to stop you from casting, by the time you're actually maybe getting into the meta stuff, things are dead once again.
This is the, I think this is the prime example where, okay, let's just put on the hypothetical example where all of your team is like equally geared, equally skilled, and you're an Arcane Mage. Now you're gonna have a bad time, regardless of how good you are or how geared. You're gonna just have a bad time because it takes so much to get all of your engines going. And by the time everything, I guess you can make an argument for boss damage maybe, and we're gonna get to some specs where they may perform a little better on boss damage. But again, in a 15, things die fast. As an arcade, you don't have that like, okay, fast press this and just melt stuff.
Yeah,
so
pretty much.
unfortunately, boys and gals, this is gonna be a C tier here. Not the worst, it can still do very well, but again, 15.
Seemingly, it's might have less success or at least less fun than Affliction and Balance.
Okay, now let's talk about Beast Mastery Hunter, which is a spec that can do well in any range of content in terms of the difficulty. Why? Well, it's kind of like the opposite of arcade, because you're just going to be able to place that on-demand AoE damage right up front, plus boss damage as well.
Oh,
so it's
kind of
100% all
there's
over,
like
right?
there's like almost no requirements for Beast Mastery to be good in a dungeon. You don't have like long cooldowns that you need to time with big pulls. You don't have specific target counts. Although maybe Beast Mastery doesn't really like 4, 5, 6 targets. Maybe Beast Mastery likes a lot more, or just like one. It's usually where Beast Mastery shines a little bit more. But even so, there's like no way to punish Beast Mastery at all in any situation.
Yeah, let's just put this on an S tier because there's really no punishment here. Like again, not really. Yeah, I guess the caveat would be that it enjoys having big pulls or just being on that single target boss fight. But then again, we have Demonology Warlock, which I guess is a very good mix between both worlds, I would say.
Yeah.
I mean, not the longest setup. It still requires some setup, but it's way more faster, I would say, than an Arcane Mage. Much faster.
Oh,
and it can pump out the damage in AoE, and in cleave, and single target too. I guess maybe in single target...
It's not. It doesn't shine that much in single target. That is still Demonology's issue even after the buffs. You might see it being struggling a bit on tyrannical keys, but in fortified you can still do pretty much a lot of damage since pretty much all of it is coming from your Felguard. So there's no like dots to put up.
Yeah, it's way better, way smoother, I would say, in AoE, and I guess that's like the most gameplay you will have in Mythic. Plus, let's put it into a respectable A tier.
I think it's good,
yeah. Let's see Destruction Warlock, man.
Destruction is
I was expecting this to be better, to be honest.
See, the thing is with Destruction is the Fire Mage syndrome from back in the day, back in BFA and Shadowlands, is where you need a lot of mobs and they need to live a lot. It has that big ass ramp time where you need your 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 27th Rain of Fire in a row to be able to deal more damage than probably all casters in the game, probably. But you probably won't see that in a 15. Things don't last that long, not to mention that tanks don't really pull that big in a 15.
Yeah, or maybe they do pull a lot more, but the setup is still there. So you can kind of put it around with Arcane Mage, maybe a little bit smoother, but not that much.
It's pretty.
You still have to get the engines going.
You probably want to do big keys with Destro.
Yeah, that's for sure. But hey, look at this, right? So if you look at like plus 25s and upwards, things look way different than what we're looking
almost
here.
Opposite.
Okay, now Fire Mage, on the other hand, I would say a pretty decent on-demand burst.
Yeah.
I guess you can talk about, fishing for the procs or enabling and maintaining the procs. That can be an issue. It's just, I guess we're gonna rank Fire Mage here, not based on the fact that it's pretty hard to get its engines going or whatever. It can do just fine in single target cleave and big AoE. It's still the problem with its damage profile.
Exactly. Like even if Fire Mage might have an easier time because combust windows are more frequent, you can pretty much do your entire combust rotation without having to stand still and cast, as with other specs might require, like Arcane. So you don't have the mobility issue there. But even though your damage is still kind of capped a little bit.
Man, Fire Mage needs so much love, goddamn, because the spec is like almost like I won't say perfect, but close to what it should be. Let's place it in between Boomkin and
I see Fire Mage
here.
being like at least A tier if we're doing like 20s and higher. We've played with some Fire Mages that can really pump if the tank pulls exactly big when you have Combust and the key is big enough, but that's not gonna happen at 15.
Get coordinated, boys. All right. Now, a Frost Mage, on the other hand, a little bit of a different story.
Oh, very surprising, actually.
I mean, Frost Mage can just pump out the damage. It's, I guess, in 15s, would it be harder to maintain Icy Veins all the time?
That's a very good
it
point.
depends on the pulls, like chain pulling all the time. And there's some dungeons where you cannot really do that. Some big-ass dungeons. I'm thinking like, Azure Vault cannot really make you chain.
Yeah, you'll have to stop casting for a
But even with that,
but it's still good. It's still good because right now pretty much everybody's gear, right? If you're starting to gear up and you're like 398 or 400 eye level or something like that, okay, fine. Nothing really applies there because everybody's still struggling to get the damage out. But if you're like, you know, farming 15s for, I don't know, some Valor or helping a friend or anything like that, and you're playing a Frost Mage, you're gonna do a lot of good, especially if a tank constantly keeps pulling and you're not just sitting there for healers to drink mana, although they might not have to drink that much mana.
No. This is
15,
this is the thing. They can pump out the damage, single target, and AoE, no problem. The biggest value of Frost Mage is maintaining that Icy Vents as much as possible, and there will be dungeons in 15s where you cannot really do that, right? So, with that being said, performance-wise in 15s, this is pretty much like super well-rounded. I guess it's in front of Demonology Warlock, which is very interesting once again if you think about the bigger keys. But hey, this is what we're going for.
What we say is you play what you like, because you never know like what can do good and what key.
Okay, Marksmanship Hunter.
Marksmanship,
another great example, I would say, for everything talked about so far.
Well, where Marksmanship would probably be the Hunter spec to shine in high-end content. In small content, it has like massive burst. Like its volley is on a very short cooldown, and that's particularly really well. It's if the targets don't die like in 2 seconds, Marksmanship can get a little bit of a burst out and it's going to be fine. Where Marksmanship kind of struggles is a little bit in single target, but then again, if you're doing 15s, and you're doing like Tyrannical or whatever, bosses are gonna die pretty quick anyway, so you won't live long enough to feel that particular weakness, and quick bursts and quick packs is something that Marksmanship does a little bit better than most specs.
Yeah, for sure. Having access to like the big burst initially will definitely help out in 15s, and you're gonna see that for a couple of more specs as well. This is Marksmanship, like a greatest attribute. I don't ever remember when I did 15s and a Marksman pop his bird that I could rival it, unless we had like some other specs on the spectrum here.
Yeah.
But I guess we're gonna place it in front of the A tier.
It's probably one of the better ones.
Yeah, one of the better ones. Like you can definitely do 15s and be like top dog, no problem.
Tap.
Now next, let's see how Devastation. Speaking about on-demand burst, now let me just get out of my seat. Now I'm gonna leave.
Devastation is basically Beast Mastery with actual burst, but actually
with attitude. It's
a little bit sucking single target. So the only issue with Devastation, which is not something that you'll feel very much, is that Dragon Rage is kind of really important for your damage, and it's a 2-minute cooldown. You cannot really alter it in any way, but everything else that you do as Devastation is a lot of damage, super easy. There's like no setup whatsoever. You can do most of your damage in AoE, if not all of it, by actually moving. So you're kind of like a Beastmaster. All of your spells are instant in AoE. And if you don't have Dragon Rage, you still have the Deep Breath, which is probably going to be on a 1-minute cooldown if you play 15s. And that's really good. Pretty much every other pack you'll have Deep Breath, every other pack you'll have Dragon Rage, and the single target is still okay when it comes to bosses, so it's probably really good in low keys.
Yeah.
You're not that squishy.
Yeah, exactly. This was what I was going to say. So the problems with Devastation and higher keys is because it's squishy, because of the range requirements. Sometimes you get fucked and you either die or you cannot really do the damage you want. In 15s, it's all smooth sailing. No questions asked. This is a S tier, the best spec you can have for 15s with no stress at all. All right, man, this is looking weird. All right, let's talk about Elemental Shaman.
Ooh, now, the controversial boy.
Elemental Shaman will receive some buffs next reset, and this is probably gonna. Well, when we're gonna do like the giga high keep, you know, super loggy data driven TLF, then we're gonna see how exactly those buffs impacted.
It's gonna be some time until then.
But I would say, like, even though it has a little bit of a setup, it's still very good in burst damage. It's still very good in like big packs. I can still see it doing better than some of the specs on single target. I mean, it's not like on demand, okay, press this, now you're gonna do giga damage, but it's like way more easier to get shit going than Boomkin, Affliction Lock,
For
like
sure.
Destro. I mean, it cannot really compare to Devastation. The Devastation burst is just insane marksmanship as well. But I guess we can still keep it into an A tier.
Yeah, it has a similar issue with Fire Mage where its damage is kind of capped anyway. Although Fire Mage seems to have a bigger damage profile.
Yeah.
But with Elemental, you don't have that many restrictions as you would with Fire Mage as well. Plus, you have like a really good toolkit to bring to your group. You obviously have Bloodlust, you have the Earth Elemental and all that, and a lot of stuns and dispels and things like that, which are going to make you able to do 15 super easy.
Yeah, and you help your group as well. So I say a respectable A tier over there, like on par with Frostin and Demo and stuff. Now, the last on the list here, which is gonna be very interesting to see because you played some Shadow Priest in Mythic Plus. I think you've touched on all of the spectrum of the keys except 25s. So what's your stand on this?
So Shadow Priest is interesting because it does require some setup. However, Shadow Priest really pumps the group up with Power Infusion. First of all, is really good. You can obviously bring a lot of tools that will let your tank pool a little bit bigger, probably a little bit better than what they would do in a 15, because you can obviously dispel. You have mass dispel that helps a lot, like in this week we have bursting and things like that. Not to mention the rotation for Shadow Priest has different layers of burst where you can do like a first pack with a couple of cooldowns and it requires like 3 globals and you do a lot of damage. The next one you can do a little bit more prep. It does seem to be better if you do higher and higher keys, right? You're still gonna hit that little wall where, oh my god, the mobs are still dying. So it depends. If you don't have like big pumpers in your group, you're gonna be fine with Shadow Priest, but you will notice some issues that you probably would with Balanced Druid as well.
Yeah, and you would expect like from a spec which does have like dots and requires setup and all of that, but because its playstyle is like segmented between different types of cooldowns, it does have a better performance in 15s, and you can definitely see that. So I guess we can put it, I don't know if it's like better than Frost, but on the line with Frost Elemental. It's an A tier. Very different than what would you see?
Interesting.
What would you see in
it is because, okay, plus 15s are not what plus 15s were before. Obviously, a lot of people will probably want to get as close to 20 as possible to get their higher eye level in their vaults. However, if you're still doing 15s because you like it, you can pretty much play anything right now. We had to kind of figure out exactly which spec is better than the rest, so that's why we kind of spread them out a couple of tiers. But if you really look at the overall data, they're very close.
Yeah, just put it on the screen right now, and you can see like the Warcraft logs, they're like almost equal, okay? So we don't necessarily do this based on the DPS, because DPS is kind of equal. Again, we're looking, even in 15s, we're looking at players that play close to perfection, and probably their team do as well. But when we're talking about Pug World, because this is mainly like, okay, you have one of these specs over here on the tier list, and you're going into the group finder tool or whatever, and you want to do a 15 or something, then this is kind of like an image, and the argument still stands, right? So you have the specs that either have a bad profile for damage, like Fire Mage, or require some setup in AoE that will not help them out in an environment where mobs die really fast.
Yeah, for sure.
Then on the upper echelon of the tier list, you have the specs that have either like on-demand super giga burst, or their setup is way more faster and they have access to different types of cooldowns that can enable them to at least be some more relevant in a big AoE pack or something like that, or even on boss damage. So this is kind of our mentality ranking these specs. Obviously, all of them can be top tier damage in a 15, as you can see on the graph on Warcraft logs. That's not an issue. It's just a matter of like, how would you as an Arcane Mage, would you like to just do 15s? I think you're gonna have a bad time with that because you're gonna be frustrated.
There's a lot of damage that you can put up, and doing higher and higher keys is always better. And
listen, this is a fun one. We're gonna do a lot more. But remember, for the next one on Friday, you have to go into the description and click on that little Google form over there and vote for Melees and Mythic Plus, because that's going to be the community tier list.
And we have no say in it.
Yeah, nothing. We're not going to look at logs now. We're going to have our opinions based on what you guys voted, but it's going to be super interesting and fun to look at it. And thank you, Patreons, for supporting the content and keeping the videos, the tier lists, the reacts,
Information.
the dungeon guides, the class guides, all the keeping them alive. Thank you so much. Check the link in the description as well. After you go for the Google form, check the link on patreon.com/MarcelianOnline. Oh man, that's a lot of talking. All right, thanks for watching.
See you next one.
Bye. See you next one. Bye.
In the next one. I said it.
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.